Where would you want a new Fallout game set in? So Chris Avallone, the senior designer of New Vegas, probably the best Fallout game, asked a question, and a very good question. Where would you want the next Fallout set? And real quick, given that Avallone is apparently a freelancer now, he might be in the early stages of working on another Fallout game. So, if you make your point right now, there's a chance that he might listen, might end up designing a game around your idea. That's sort of the situation we might be in. Big emphasis on might, though, because we don't even know if he's working with Bethesda or Xbox or anything. But another Fallout game would only be the smartest thing Bethesda has done, given how successful the TV show was. So it might not be Fallout 5, but another game like New Vegas, which in this case would basically be like Fallout 4 in a new location, would be a very good idea right now. And that location is important. So go ahead and let me know your ideas down below in the comments. I have 6 ideas. Maybe you'll have the same ideas as I have. Who knows? Some of these ideas definitely aren't unique to me. I've seen them come from other people. So maybe we'll have some of the same ideas, which if we have some of the same ideas, wouldn't that mean they're good ideas? I don't know. So I decided to stick with the US because I remember the makers of Fallout. I don't remember if it was like the original or if it was Bethesda, but I remember them saying that like the American kind of like patriotism and like American themes woven into it were sort of foundational to the theme of Fallout, and also because it would make this list so much longer if I didn't narrow it down that way. So the first and probably my favorite idea is New Orleans. So like the swampy environment and an overgrown Louisiana sounds really interesting and provides a lot of room for mutated creatures like alligators. New Orleans was also a big music hub back in the day, adding another layer to like the overall feel of the setting. You could have a lot of that 40s and 50s jazz going on, and like the French architecture and touch of like voodoo myths that are popular in the city would be really cool, I think. And then lore wise, New Orleans is also a clean slate, only briefly being mentioned in Fallout 76 as far as I know. So they could do pretty much anything here, which I think is something that they would like. Next is Miami, a great location. However, I do want to point out that it'd sort of be stepping on the toes of modders to set the game here, given that there's an ambitious mod being worked on called Fallout Miami. That said, it is another sort of interesting environment with lots of sandy beaches and palm trees, but also overgrown swampy areas not too far away, mutated alligators again, and Miami modern architecture throughout the urban areas. This is what Miami modern architecture looks like. Pretty interesting, I think. And then Spanish and Cuban music could also add to the feel, That would be pretty unique for a Fallout game. Obviously, it'd still be on the retro side. However, I feel like Miami lends more to like the 60s to 80s vibe, which is, I think, just a touch past where Fallout's kind of vibe is. That said, the Fallout alternate timeline doesn't prevent, like a neon-drenched city if that's what they want. But all that said, if the next Fallout game is in Miami, hopefully the modders get some form of credit. Maybe they're even brought on to add some of their assets to the game, or, maybe even just a check and their name in the credits. I don't know. My third idea is Denver. And Denver actually has a lot of pre-established lore. The city was overrun with mutant dogs, and only one raider gang was willing to go into the city. That gang got folded into the Legion, meaning it might be a Legion city still. The lore surrounding the Legion hasn't been touched on much, so it's hard to tell if they're still around or how powerful they are, but Denver has a unique environment for Fallout. Tall, snowy mountains haven't been seen in Fallout, and honestly, it could give them an excuse to reuse some Skyrim assets. I literally would not blame them for doing that. Fallout Skyrim sounds fun to me. I don't know. I don't know about you. But if the game is set there, then most likely Denver wouldn't be completely overrun by dogs anymore and has safe areas or whatever. But it would be cool if pockets of the city were still like dangerously overrun. My fourth idea is St. Louis, which I think has a decent mix of like rural outskirts, and then there's a national forest nearby, and then the Mississippi River, and then of course the iconic Arch. It also has a bit of lore behind it, making it a super mutant stronghold, which gives me an interesting idea. Say the super mutants living there aren't blindly violent anymore, sort of like Jacobstown and New Vegas, but humans are encroaching on the city, because that's something humans tend to do. They tend to move in places. And maybe that's making the super mutants increasingly violent again. It could create a lot of choices on how to handle the super mutants, stories on super mutant assimilation into human life, or discrimination, or even terrorism with the super mutants that blow themselves up, and expanded lore on the multiple origins of super mutants, because if you don't know this, there actually is multiple origins. They're not all just from one point, and more. There's a lot you can do there. The city was also known for blues musicians, meaning there will be lots of great picks for the radio stations. So the fifth idea is Hawaii. I think Oahu would be extremely radioactive from bombing of Honolulu. I mean, that city would basically be a crater, given the location of China. So maybe start the game on Maui and then progress to Oahu, like the glowing sea in Fallout 4. Which, by the way, it was actually a super cool thing in Fallout 4. A lot of people don't give Fallout 4 credit for that. But so yeah, I feel like Hawaii is actually pretty self-explanatory. You know, very unique environment with jungles and volcanoes, bunch of stuff in between, cool music, and you know there'd be some crazy experiments going on out there. But apparently a recent mod for New Vegas is based in Hawaii. So again, hopefully these modders would get some form of credit if Bethesda does go in this direction. I mean, they are a AAA dev, like they could definitely pay them a bit and add them to the credits to help them get jobs. Would not be hard. And so my sixth and final idea, and I actually saw this in a meme, but completely agree, is Memphis. Any city along the Mississippi is interesting territory, I think. You know, between the boats that are basically buildings and, you know, all the interesting wildlife that could live there, there's a lot that can be done with the Mississippi River. And Memphis has a lot of Egyptian references, you know, in the name and architecture that could be played with, you know, because there's that big pyramid, which I'll get back to in a second. But like, imagine the city is run by someone claiming to be like a pharaoh or an Egyptian god. Like that could create like a very interesting faction, you know, like a cult faction, or maybe that's just the government now. I don't know. Like maybe Memphis is a city-state, sort of like New Vegas was a city-state. And then the Memphis pyramid could have been used for some crazy science doohickey, as that tends to be a big part of the Fallout games, is some crazy science doohickey. The only sort of thing is would the Memphis pyramid necessarily be built in an alternate history timeline? And my answer to that is don't overthink it. Yeah, it will be. And finally about Memphis, there's a lot of music from Memphis. Memphis was big on music, so there's a lot to play with there. And so yeah, that's my 6 ideas. There's also some other ideas that I saw or heard of that I was kind of like on the fence about. You know, I heard a lot about various cities in Texas, but as a Texan, I'm not sure that'd work well. All of the interesting environments are like completely separated. Unless it's predominantly urban, it seems pointless. You know, you could have, I guess, a Dallas-Fort Worth game or a Houston game, but they'd basically be entirely urban, I think. I don't know, maybe San Antonio? And Alaska is too cold for me. Cold stuff is depressing. I don't like the sound of that. Colorado is as snowy as it'll go. LA could be cool, but the lore there is a bit messy. Between the TV show and the original games, they're not entirely in agreement. I guess a game there could clear it up, but could also just complicate things. And the NCR would probably have also left things too stable to be interesting gameplay-wise. I mean, of course things can change, but you have to think about how to play into the TV show, because the show is predominantly in that area. And, you know, while everything going on there is violent for a TV show, it would be pretty tame in comparison to the games. But yeah, not that that can't change. I just don't know how it would work in the TV show. I mean, I guess in the TV show, they're going to New Vegas in the next season, so maybe they just don't return to Los Angeles. I don't know. But so yeah, like I said earlier, if you have any ideas, let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit the like button. If you want to see more, subscribe. That's it for today, so yeah, see ya.
Don't overthink it.